panel, OG feels specifically because they do not consider the nuances of the African context and the nuances of the EU and Britain before making their case. Another reason which they feel is that while they seek to end oppression for African states, they give us a policy that is more oppressive to African states which they seek to protect. We are going to be giving you analysis with regards to this in our case. But apart from the fact that Duke makes a lot of assertions without giving us analysis, let us engage some of the things which he said in his speech. First, he talks about how we always had connection with Britain, and we continue to be underdeveloped. And this was the most important point in today's debate, that Africa has not received emancipation despite being in relationship with Britain for such a long time. But we feel like the reason for this is because Britain has always been part of the EU, and the cosmopolitan ideologies and ideals of the EU are those things that have continued to marginalize Africa and continue to underdevelop Africa. Further analysis on this will be coming subsequently in my speech. But then second, it goes to say how Britain is definitely going to fail. But we feel rather that, aside the fact that it gives no analysis for this, we are going to be engaging you on how the EU is even more likely to fail than Britain and why it is something which is particularly harmful for Africa. So before I give the summary of today's debate on why cost is particularly important and an important consideration in today's debate, like all those things which will show you the nuances of this context, why it is particularly important. Second, we're showing you how which agreement is more oppressive to African states. But first, on the point on why Africa is underdeveloped and how cosmopolitanism has contributed to this. So David will already show you the principle in today's debate of how cosmopolitanism is a thing which fails to consider the nuances and context of countries, while giving them a false notion of world citizenry and making them subscribe to those contexts to those ideals without considering their context. Like Africa is even the poorest continent in the world, and we are forced to buy into ideas that continue to ensure that we are further marginalized, like ideas that ensure that we are continuously underdeveloped, ideas that want us to put the interests of other more powerful states before our own interests, ideas that do not consider the nuances of the African context and expect policies and drive that work in richer countries to work in African countries. Like we feel like these are the reasons why Africa is continuously underdeveloped, and these are the ideals of the EU. These are the ideas which motivated Britain to depart from the EU, and further going into such systems which will further marginalize Africa is something which we do not want. So we feel like our problem is the whole cosmopolitanist idea of the EU, and you won't get emancipation for Africa which you want if you continue buying into those systems. That's why we give you better emancipation on our side. Why we take depart from a system, buy up and build a more nationalistic policy which is favorable and acceptable to the nuances of the African context, and we like that idea better than what they give us on their side of the house. And second, let us analyze why EU is even particularly unreliable. And Africa, considering where we are right now, we do not need to get into systems that are even going to be more destructive for us, especially considering how unreliable the UN is. Closing.
If the Brexit policy hasn't materialized and we or might not work, why is it best for us to gamble with our development compared to a system that which we already know?
Actually, a system which we already know is the British system, which is more likely to succeed than the Brexit system, which is more likely to fail. And this is something that I'm going to analyze for you in today's debate. First, let us look at how many powerful and richer nations in the EU are already departing from the EU. Like France is already having plans of departing from the EU, and France is the only country, as David already showed you, in the Security Council. So this is their big guy right now in the Security Council, which could potentially represent their interests. And this is the same guy which is already having plans of leaving the EU. But the fact that this is something which is possible means that we shouldn't gamble with the future of African lives by going into a system which is more unreliable than the system which we are more familiar with, a relationship which we are more familiar with and reasonably trust. And we also see that so many countries in the EU already have many economic crises. Greece has economic crisis, Spain has economic crisis, Cyprus, Italy, and these are the countries that would have us put our entire future on. And when we talk about bilateral agreements, we are not just talking about economic policies. We are talking about also, we are also referring to military agreements and all of that. And these are things that are particularly important for African nations. The United States relationship with Britain is something which is particularly advantageous for us than for us going into countries or into a system that is unreliable. We feel like this is particularly hard. And we also see that there is a lot of clash also in the EU. So it's a system which is very disunited in itself. We see Ukraine and Russia being at war, potentially being at war, and this is something which we cannot cannot bank on. We cannot bank on the EU, and that is why it is very wrong for us to place the future of Africa in a completely unreliable system. Third, why we lose nothing if we keep on having relationships with Britain? Because Britain will always still have access to the okay, close.
Yeah, here's the thing. When you talk about the philosophy of why Britain left the European Union, are you aware it was the United Kingdom Independent Party, an ultra-right nationalist party that actually initiated that?
If it's an ultra-white nationalist party that furthers the interest of the most number of people in that society, why did you prioritize the interest of some other countries who do not consider the nuances of a country over that of the country? Like, we feel like this is completely ludicrous, and this is something which they want us to force on African states. We are very, very proud to oppose such things. And now let's talk about how we lose nothing. Like I was saying earlier, like Britain is so powerful that if we continue to have relationship with other European nations and continue to have relationship trade with the market system, this means that Africa loses nothing as a result. We can still trade with these nations without losing the very important relationship which we have in Britain, and this is something we feel that we should prioritize in today's debate. So a summary of today's debate based on these two considerations, like they're already feeling comfortable, like, hey, these things are mechanistic. But why is cost particularly important? Because we are dealing with realities here. This is Africa, where we are faced with so much problems, so much economic problems, so much problems of wars, and so much poverty going on right now. And you want us to put the future of Africa in a system that is completely unreliable, a system which is very ineffective, like David already showed you. Like, it is not an efficient system in comparison with the British system. People who have like completely heterogeneous ideas, who have completely heterogeneous policies, and you want us to bank our entire future upon the system, we feel like this is a cost that Africa is not ready and willing to pay in today's debate. Second, why this agreement is more oppressive to African states. Like, we seek the emancipation of African states. What system furthers that emancipation, that the system that forces Africa to disregard its context and appreciate some false cosmopolitan ideals? We feel like these guys do not speak to the heart of the African problem, and we are very proud to oppose their policy.